All right, in this little coaching session, I just want to point out some things about the differences between podcasting and radio. And right now I'm at a website called podcast.place. And you can see the web's only place for podcast industry news and information. Well, that's a great tagline. Welcome to Podcast Place. And except it's not the only place for podcast news. There's podcaster news. There's also podcasting news. But this is from a company called Radio Linux, and they can help and start you grow your syndicated radio show. And they seem like very nice people. They will charge you $625 a month, and they want 3 months up front. And what's interesting about this is, and if you go over, for the record, they've got some case studies, and they obviously know radio and how to get affiliates and things of that nature. So the problem is there's a big difference between podcasting and radio in terms of technology. It's all about creating good content, but their main part of their website is this right here, which is news. And the one thing you notice we haven't seen here yet, there's no email sign up. And you can see here's where their radio, Linux broadcast marketing company. And this just came up 2015. This is their main, and these aren't blog posts. Like, this is it. This is your blurb. There's no link here to the Artie Lang Show. It's kind of interesting. So is in terms of useful news, it's like, here's a headline, go Google it. But it's interesting that a marketing company has no email and, more importantly, no RSS feed. If I want to subscribe to Podcaster News, I've got all sorts of ways to subscribe to have that content come to me. Is here again. You can see on their website, podcast.place, the internet's only online source for news and information for the favorite podcast industry. Call me weird. There's no podcast. And there's no click here to listen to my podcast. When I search for Keith Rupnick in the iTunes store, I get Igloo Radio. When I do a search for Paula, I guess it's Barsh, I find maybe your husband, Paul, but nothing from her. And lastly, when I do a search for Neil Epstein or Stein, I see Brandon, but I don't see anything from Neil. So it appears these folks have no firsthand podcast knowledge, which doesn't mean, to be a reporter, you don't have to have, people that report on the NFL are not football players in many cases. But I'm just pointing out that in this case, there's no firsthand knowledge. So let's follow the trail. I see they have advertising on this site, so maybe that's why they're directing people here. So when I click on this, this is podcastingbyprofessionals.com. Let's see who their team is. Oh, there you go. Their team is Radio Linux, which at the top is podcastingbyprofessionals.com/Keith Rupnick, who was on that team over there. And here you've got a podcast now, which might be their marketing arm, yeah. So but here, syndicating your show, how to get your started behind the mic. Interesting. And here, $97 for their marketing program. So again, I find it odd that a marketing company doesn't have an email list, doesn't have an RSS feed. All right, here's another little thing that it talks here about, learn the techniques from a pro. Here's our friend Keith Rupnick. So Keith, but down here, I can purchase this now. Let's do that in a new tab. And down here, they have a podcast called Podcasting by Professionals. And when I go to iTunes and I typed in Podcasting by Professionals, it's not in iTunes. Let me make sure I'm not. Nope. So let me here again. Just show me podcasts. It sure doesn't seem that way. Let me double check here. So here again, your podcast consultant or the people telling you aren't in iTunes. Just a thought. And lastly, let's go back here. You can see here their Purchase Now button. They want $197 to teach you how to podcast, even though their podcast is not in iTunes. So I've been podcasting since 2005. Let's do that. Let's just do that, shall we? Let's type in David Jackson into iTunes and see what comes up. Yeah, there you go. Here are all the different podcasts I've done. The Podcast Review Show, Ask the Podcast Coach. Here's all the different shows that I've appeared on. Just a little difference. And some guy has my name that has an album. But, and I bet if we type in Dave Jackson, which is what a lot of people call me, we'll get even more. There we go. There's the School of Podcasting. Here's where I was on ProfitCast, the Leadership Podcast, PCN News. Wow, there's an old podcast that I don't do anymore. So just a thought when it comes to hiring a podcast consultant. A, make sure they have a podcast. B, make sure they understand how podcasting is delivered via RSS. And C, make sure they're in iTunes. Here at the School of Podcasting, we're currently charging $99 for your first month, and every month after that is $9.99. That's always subject to change, but we always say come for the education. We have step-by-step tutorials. You can see here are just some of the topics that you'll learn, and stay for the community because we have our Facebook group. We have our monthly live phone calls where you can talk to me, and check it out, schoolofpodcasting.com, and start podcasting from someone who understands podcasting today.